Farnsworth. Come on up, David Farnsworth.
All right. To tariff or not to tariff? That is the question. Fortunately for you, that's about as much as you're going to get from tariffs from me. So, briefly, I just want to welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out here. This is our second annual Ben Talks, and it is a fun initiative that we're doing. And just to share a little bit about why it's exciting, is to share a little bit about what Benjamin Franklin stands for. Akin to the real Benjamin Franklin, the one that shows up on the $100 bill, he was intellectually curious. He always was busy, involved, and vocal, and always looking for truth and goodness and beauty. And this is the namesake of our school. And so we love any of this. We love the pursuit of truth and goodness and beauty. And that's what we like to engage in all kinds of activities. And this event just falls right in line with that. And I want to highlight one of our core focus here at Benjamin Franklin. Our core focus is to prepare students to live a full and honorable life. And we do that by educating their hearts and their minds in a wholesome environment. That's why we exist. That's the whole point of this. And some additional guiding principles. We live by some core values here at Benjamin Franklin. We call that the Franklin Way. And it starts out with practice and emulate virtue. Be intellectually curious. Have a growth mindset. Be intentionally positive. And one of my favorites as of late is promote civility. And so this event, again, is another example of our core values. It supplies and supports our core focus. And so thank you for being here. I'm grateful for Mr. Fernando and everybody else who's involved in creating this. And we hope that this ignites a little bit of curiosity, a little bit of wonder, and maybe get you to do a little bit of growth mindset. But anything, no matter what, whether it's tariffs or anything else, we hope that each of you promote civility as we pursue truth, goodness, and beauty. And with that, we'll get on to the main event. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend, David Farnsworth. All right, first up, Don Myers studied calculus, chemistry, and anatomy, but he transitioned into teaching English. Before that, he at one point had moved to Italy. Moved as in he packed a bag of clothes, a bicycle, and a guitar, and went for one of the most momentous years in his life to Italy. He taught English there. He learned to cook. Now he spends time rearing horses when he's not grading papers. Mr. Meyer knows something about taking risks and what it means, what it might mean for his profession and his students. Let's welcome Mr. Don Meyer.
Good evening. First, I just want to have a little bit of a side note on Mr. Fernando here. I'm looking forward to his talk next year on salesmanship, because I'm not sure about the other 7 people in this room, but I received an email with an attachment of one of my own presentations that I present in class with a little note saying, I found this just fascinating, your thoughts on Victorian literature. I'm sure other people would really enjoy hearing your thoughts on this. Would you be interested in doing a TED Talk? And so, yes, I'm not sure how everybody else got up here, but fair play. I'm not talking about Victorian literature. I'm talking about something a little cheerier instead. And that is, I call it tragic outcomes, or how I learned to stop worrying and love nemesis. So, I don't know how we're going to do the next one. Can I just do that? So we are surrounded in our culture with the word tragic. Tragic this, tragic that, and everything's a tragedy and all that. But being a bit of a wordsmith and someone who studied a little bit about Greek drama and the history of drama, I have a real quibble with that. It's not just because of the word, because I think the word conveys a much deeper meaning than we tend to give it today. And I would suggest that we are not surrounded by tragedies. Bad things happen, and that's true. But the real tragedy, you might say, is us not recognizing what is truly tragic. So, I just want to talk a little bit about what tragedy originally meant and how I think it's beneficial for us to embrace, let's say, the tragic vision. Even though it sounds negative, I think it's demonstrably positive in that respect. So, leave it to the Greeks. Tragedy is not just a sad story. It's not just a catastrophe. It's not earthquakes and floods and bad things that happen. In fact, tragedy is a process. And it's a process that Aristotle discerned over time, looking at scores and scores of tragedies that won prizes back in the 5th century, 4th century, and 5th century BC. And when he was writing about things, he wanted to find out which ones were the most effective to people, like which ones really tugged at their heartstrings and connected with people. What he discovered was essentially a process. And what happened was a person who was pretty darn good, we would maybe call him a tragic hero, committed a hamartia. Hamartia is, in the New Testament, defined as sin. It's also an archery term in ancient Greece, which means missing the mark. How much did you miss a bullseye for? And so the idea was you were trying for perfection, but you failed. You were trying to do something right, you did something wrong. It wasn't you were out there saying, I'm going to do evil things. You're out there trying to do the right thing, only you chose the wrong thing. And so that hamartia leads to a peripeteia, a reversal of fortune. The best reversal of fortunes in tragedies, according to Aristotle, were catastrophes, things that literally means fall from a great height, that refuses to acknowledge that some punishments and some consequences are just and severe. We tend to blame the world for everything, and ourselves for nothing. And of course, I think that flies in the face of reality. We are responsible for much of what happens to us, and if we refuse to accept that, we become miserable. And I think most people understand that people who are always trying to be the victims are the ones who are the most insufferable, because they refuse to engage in their suffering. The second thing is that tragedy teaches us. If we really embrace the tragic vision, we learn from every mistake that we make. Suffering is an excellent teacher. You can go all the way back to the Greeks, you can go back to the medieval theologians, you can go back to St. Augustine. Suffering is a teacher. If we are willing students, we learn a lot from suffering. We can embrace the suffering, learn from it, and move forward. Thank you very much.
Up next, we have an author who writes under the name L.L. Standage. Welcome, Amy Standage.
My name is Amy Standage. I write under the name L.L. Standage. And I write young adult fantasy and urban fantasy. I am here today to talk a little bit about one of the tools that I use as an author and one of the concepts that I use, which is character, conflict, and catharsis. And usually when I'm speaking on this subject, I'm talking to a room full of other writers. And while there may be some writers in this room, I realize that not everybody is. So I had to ask myself, what can I teach and explain that would appeal to a wide audience? And the answer is that these 3 C's of great fiction are not just tools for writers. They are part of what define us as human beings. Next slide, please. Take the first C, which is character. The main character in a book or in a movie is the person that we follow, and not only that, is the person that we typically identify with and connect with. So I want you to think about one of your favorite characters in fiction, and I'm going to pick one that hopefully most of us are pretty well aware of and can recognize, and that is Harry Potter. Why do Harry Potter fans love him so much? It's because we see ourselves in him. Every lovable character in fiction has a goal, and for Harry, that's what? To defeat Voldemort? Yes, that's part of it, but you won't find very many of us facing down an evil wizard in our lives. However, it goes much deeper than that. Harry's goal is ultimately to find a home with love and acceptance from family. Isn't that something we can all identify with? I write conflict because it keeps you turning the page. But I also write conflict because I want to give you hope. And it's the hope and the buildup and the hard lessons and learnings that bring us to the moment that makes it all worth it. And that is catharsis. For those of you who may not know, catharsis is a fancy word for the release and relief from strong or repressed emotions. but I love me some alliteration, so catharsis is the word I use. That release and relief is what makes everything feel good. We cheer when our hero defeats the bad guy because we've grown to love our hero. Catharsis is therapeutic. Another example from literature is Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. She goes through so much before she finally realizes her great love for Mr. Darcy. And I'd say spoiler alert, but the book has been out for over 200 years. So, it takes Elizabeth around 347 pages and nearly 3 volumes to admit she returns the love Mr. Darcy has for her. The buildup and the tension, the hope, the setbacks, all culminate in that fabulous moment when our spunky heroine finds her happily ever after. And oh, how satisfying that moment is for us.
Good evening, everybody. Today, I've been tasked to tell my story about my journey to medicine, or why I became, or want to pursue to be a physician. And so a lot of you may be wondering, why is he a teacher? And I know Mr. Jeffries already spoiled it a little bit, but this wasn't originally what I wanted to do. And what I'm up here for is to hopefully inspire some people, not to go into medicine necessarily, but through my story, what I had to go through, and hopefully take that with you moving forward. And it has to do with what is called a domestic worker. In developing countries, sometimes they don't have the privileges of getting to choose what they want to do, get to wake up in the morning and say, hey, I want to go do this, or I want to go do that, I want to go hang out with my friends. Sometimes they don't have that choice, and I'm going to talk about a story about a female from the Philippines, because that's where my family came from, and how she had to be contracted to a different country under a different family and work for them for pennies a day, because she had no other choice, and her family was sick. And so to imagine just a fraction of the money she makes, she even gets to keep, and that's pennies a day, has to be sent over to her family, and it's rinse and repeat. One of her colleagues told her, why don't you go pursue what you've always been wanting to do, right? And in that case, she wanted to be a nurse. And what she said is what really stuck with me, the idea that choice is only for the rich. And I internalized this because growing up, I never had to feel any burden or sacrifice, and I got to wake up and do what I wanted to do as a kid, up to this point. And so when it came to the decision of having to choose what my life is going to be, what my career will be, I took this into consideration, the idea that I have a privilege that not many others have. A great portion of the world doesn't get to choose a path in their lives. What I want you to take away from this story are 3 main things. The first being, when you're finding your purpose, especially those students who are going to have to make a decision of what they want to do in the future, keep in mind that that choice, not many have. So really take advantage of it and try to make a big impact on others with that privilege. Find a destination that will take you to great heights. The second is, although you may have found that destination, sometimes point A to B may not be so easy. The road to get there may not turn out to be the way it is. You might have to take a detour. You might have to take an alternate route. Maybe a tree falls in front of the road and now you're stuck there. What are you going to do? When you're confronting failure, you have to make the decision of, are you going to quail in fear, or will you try to tackle it head on? And lastly is that life is full of uncertainty. I'm sure everyone knows that in here. And throughout your entire life, you're fixed on trying to find the certainty in the uncertainty of what is life. So to wrap up, find a destination. That road may not be so easy. So strap your seatbelts and don't be afraid to take a road where you may not know where it leads, because it might open a door to a new opportunity. Thank you.
Next up, so a native of New York, Lauren Mucciolo, is an award-winning independent producer based now at the ASU Cronkite School of Journalism as executive producer of the Howard Center for Investigative Journalism. A gifted storyteller, she has worked with the BBC and PBS Frontline, specializing in character-driven documentaries. Lauren co-founded a youth film workshop in and is an instructor at the City University of New York. Please welcome to the stage, Lauren Mucciolo.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. What I wanted to show you to start is a trailer for my next film, which is coming out on TV on Tuesday. So we can play the, if you want to make that clip big, let's play it. It's 30 seconds.
Were completely submerged. Thousands of miles of coastlines have impacted.
In collaboration with the Howard Center for Investigative Journalism.
Do you think they really grasp the dire straits that are facing Alaska Native villages?
The impact of climate change on Alaska's native villages.
A little over a year after that catastrophic storm hit Alaska, I flew up the western coast. I was headed for an area called the YK Delta, about 500 miles west of Anchorage, home to dozens of small native villages for the Chupik and Yupik people. They're some of the most vulnerable communities in the country to climate change.
I had the pleasure of working on this project, Alaska's Vanishing Native Villages, over the past year and a half, traveling back and forth to Alaska to make this film. And I wanted to talk to you guys about the power of documentary journalism. This is something I'm very passionate about. I've been a filmmaker and a journalist for a long time. But the power of documentary journalism, and it's, I think, a power that people are starting to recognize with the growth of, I think we're seeing more nonfiction content on streaming platforms, on things like Netflix, even on our cable channels. There's more of an appetite for this kind of conversation. And I think it's wonderful because the beautiful thing about documentary is that it really does have the power to shape public discourse. And during times like this, when there's so much different media communicating so many different things, and sometimes messages that conflict with each other, it's important for us to learn how to be good, critical consumers of journalism and of media. And so what I can tell you about my approach to making these films is that it all starts with access. These are real people's lives, and the beauty of documentary filmmaking is that it allows you to bring your audience and bring your viewers into a world they may have never been to before. So immersing yourself in a world that may be foreign, may be unique, and just may not be like anything you've ever imagined before. Documentary allows you to experience those places and experience life with those people and see the world through their eyes. And that's kind of amazing. So for example, this is a woman who I got to spend time with in Alaska. Her name is Estelle Thompson. She is the tribal council president of the native village of Pine Butte, which is one of the Alaska native villages in Alaska. In fact, Alaska actually has, I think, about 40% of all the federally recognized tribes in the United States, which I don't think a lot of people realize. And so Estelle is on a journey right now to try to figure out how to help her people, because where they live in Alaska is literally vanishing. It's literally washing away into the ocean. It is literally eroding before their eyes. They're experiencing more severe storms more frequently, and it's becoming too much to bear. So they are now trying to figure out how to help and support their people. So they're having to navigate grant programs, they're having to navigate technical expertise and support to try to get this dear, desperate support that these communities need so much. So character, we've heard a little bit about character from some of the other speakers, but the ability to connect with the character is a way to really understand their world. Another way is through scenes. This is a shot from a film I made in Phoenix, actually, about, when did it come out? 2019, I believe it came out. So this is a film I had access with the Phoenix Police Department, and specifically with their anti-trafficking unit. And we were given access to follow around these police officers on their operations as they were trying to root out sex trafficking, human trafficking, and identify and support survivors. And so to be able to tell the story of what human trafficking is, we thought that the best way to do that would be to bring our audience on a journey alongside law enforcement as they actually went out to try to find these criminals who are perpetrating this crime, find the buyers who are creating demand for this crime, and hopefully help some of the survivors who have been victimized by this crime. You're never gonna guess. The crime that she committed was that she skipped school. And in the state of Kentucky, she was incarcerated for that. Now, the state of Kentucky has since reformed its laws around juvenile detention. But essentially, at that time, tardiness or just not showing up at school would be an offense that would put you in jail as a kid. And obviously what we learned as you kind of go spend some more time with some of the characters and hear from some of the experts in the film, beginning an experience with incarceration at that age actually has an impact on what happens with the rest of your life and whether you're going to have more interactions with the criminal justice system over the course of your life. And so I think there's a lot of value in documentary journalism. A lot of what we're seeing is true crime stuff on TV. It's not always great journalism, but it's great to see nonfiction storytelling. There's tremendous power in nonfiction storytelling. There's tremendous power in real people's lives and real people's experiences and real people's perspectives. And so I just encourage you guys, this is a medium that I've grown to love, and I think there's something in it for everyone. So, thank you.
We'll go ahead and get started with the second half of our program tonight by introducing our next speaker. History, to Mrs. Jen Oliver, is a truly remarkable blueprint for how to achieve greatness or misery. A history teacher for 8 years, she believes that a teacher's role is to bring the people and events to life so that they help students analyze and discuss the words and actions of historical figures. I know this firsthand as some of my own children have had her as a teacher and have come away as better students, better learners, and most importantly, better people. Please welcome to the stage Mrs. Jen Oliver.
That's a huge compliment. I appreciate that very much. I've been teaching 8th grade U.S. history for a while now, and I like to start each one of my years fresh and new and with asking the question, what is America? And inevitably, if you had to guess what a 14-year-old student might say, go ahead and shout it out. What might it be, guys? What is America? Shout out anything, because that's what they do. Yeah, freedom, yes. What else?
Apple pie.
That's right, apple pie. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. They typically quote the very end of the Star Spangled Banner. Land of the free, home of the brave. And then, of course, you have some brave soul who will, of course, yell out of turn, out of place, play ball.
Yeah.
Thank you, of course. And usually I push back a little bit on that because it is just a platitude at that point. Something they've always heard. They're being a little silly with those types of things. And I try to go a little bit deeper with them. Recognize that we've just really started the course for that year. Sometimes we get some thoughtful responses. But as I've been teaching history for the last few years, and always being a student of history, and trying to make sense of what this great land is, that I do love too, I recognize that that trite statement is true. It really is the land of the free and the home of the brave. And we're going to talk about that a little bit to try to help define just what this great nation is. But first I'm going to start with the home of the brave. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Scholars believe that around 20,000 years ago or so, that people came to America for the first time. That no one is really truly from here, that this has always been a nation of immigrants. Whether they came over the frozen Bering Strait or kind of sailed along the coast from Asia down over here to Alaska and then further down, or maybe even showed up from across the Atlantic from Europe and made their way down the East Coast. But that's what the common belief is of who first came to America. Now, we don't really know why. We don't have their stories and weren't written down, and we definitely don't have any proof of that, or very little proof of that, but a lot of speculations, a lot of guesses. But we do have some of the remnants and some of the old civilizations, on the next slide, of some of their descendants. For instance, you've got the mound builders in the Midwest. Let's go to the next one. And of course, the Anasazi out here in the Southwest. And while we don't know a whole lot about their stories either, we know that something brought them here. Just like something brought everyone here. Just like if you think hard enough, someone brought your ancestors here too. And what that something is interesting. And it's probably different for everyone. Maybe it's famine, maybe it's warfare, maybe it's disease, maybe it's adventure. But whatever those things were, the people that came to America first and foremost came from somewhere else. They left behind what they knew with the expectation of something different. And that's an interesting thing, an interesting concept. Well, of course, going on the next slide, of course, we know about Christopher Columbus as well. In fact, he's the one that puts America on the map, although he wouldn't know it. He was very determined with his calculations. He knew exactly where he was sailing. He only made two different modifications to that route. One was due to the way the birds flew over the head, and he was kind of like, okay, I gotta go this way, and it looks like land might be over there. The other one he changed, and we're not really sure why, just that he changed his course just slightly. That one probably saved his boat from being smashed in a reef out there in the Caribbean. The first one definitely saved him from being overthrown and a mutiny, because the crew basically said, we better find some land here soon, Columbus, or you're out of here, we're going home. But with fierce determination and boldness, he kept the course. And he found what would become the New World. Like I said before, he didn't know it. He believed that he'd found the islands off of India and China that Marco Polo had written about, thousands and thousands of islands. And he thought if he just kept going a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further west, that eventually he'd meet mainland China and be able to help secure gold, send it back to the King and Queen of Spain, and be able to fund another crusade for Jerusalem. He believed that he was living near the end of times, and that these things needed to happen as a devout Christian. And what's tragic, on the next slide, or maybe not, using that word incorrectly probably, but what is interesting, how about that, I'll correct myself, is that Columbus, on his fourth and final voyage to the New World, lands in Panama. And there he is, Portobello, Panama, right there. Had he just gone a few more miles, what would he have discovered? Well, eventually, the Pacific Ocean. Probably would have absolutely rattled him to the core. He was so determined, so decisive, so sure of where he was and where he was going. It might have been merciful that he actually didn't keep traveling with his exploratory crew into much further of that jungle in Panama. And so we know what brought Columbus to the New World. However, everything about that expedition, we also know, was not as it was intended to be. He did not end up anywhere he wanted to go. He did not end up finding what he was searching for. And he did not end up being able to proclaim that gold and bring it back to Spain like he hoped he would. But yet, in his personal failure, he left a permanent connection between the old and new world that would now be a land available and known and documented and charted and eventually named America that others could follow. And of course we have more Spanish explorers, and they will Balboa see the Pacific Ocean, and French explorers, they will come up and down in Canada and in the Mississippi Valley area and in those areas. And then of course other Englishmen, they'll come in too. And it'll be those British colonists that we know the most. Probably the most famous of those early colonies, of course, and on the next slide, is founded by the Pilgrims that left England because of religious persecution had a little pit stop in Holland, and then made their way across the Atlantic Ocean during hurricane season, no mind you, on the Mayflower. Now the Mayflower was headed to the Virginia colony. The Virginia colony at that time was huge, it was massive. It went all the way up to what was now the Hudson River and all the way over to the fabled Northwest Passage that we had hoped was there. And it was rocking and rolling out there in the Atlantic Ocean. John Howland, of course, gets knocked off the boat and barely saves himself by the skin of his teeth, grabbing a rope from the Mayflower, and they haul him back in. An indentured servant at 28. What was his life like? To willingly enter indentured servitude at that age. How many misfortunes did he have? He was willing to do it, to try again, to live by a peace of conscience. He'll marry, have 10 kids, over 2 million of you guys out here. Somebody's probably related to him. If you're related to George W. Bush, if you're related to FDR, if you're related to Ralph Waldo Emerson, if you guys are cousins, you're probably related to this particular pilgrim who ends up making his way in the New World and overcoming his beginnings. But for the Mayflower and for those on it, they did not intend to land in Cape Cod. Freezing cold, not so good. Don't get off the boat right away. Look around, realize, okay, let's try to go down a little bit south. Let's try to make our way to Virginia like we're supposed to be, like the charter says we can go. And of course, the waves are pushing them back, pushing them back, pushing them back. Mayflower, by the way, is not the greatest boat. It's seen its best days. And so they decide, okay, it looks like we're going to stay on the boat here for a while. We're going to stay here. And as winter turns to spring, we'll go ahead and disembark and start this little colony of ours, totally outside where they were supposed to be in this area. And while they're on that boat, circumstances beyond their control, they look around and they realize, oh great, that's right, it's not just Puritans on this boat. It's not just separatists. We've got what we call strangers with us, non-believers, or at least those who aren't as committed to Christianity the way we think that you should be. And so as they look around, we have the very first instance that we know of social contract being developed, the Mayflower Compact. A promise and an agreement that we're going to come up with the rules together, and when we do, we're going to live by those rules. And so the rule of self-government is established there in that small colony of Plymouth. Well, eventually, of course, other colonists will come in. And so you've got, colonists coming in from Great Britain, from all over Europe. They're founding Maryland, when the Catholics aren't popular. They're going to found Pennsylvania. It says the king owes William Penn some money. Hey, how about a colony? I don't really have the cash. So it gives them a big colony instead over there. They're going to found, and then they're going to split off from what will become the Massachusetts Bay Colony in time. And, sometimes those guys are just too pure. So some of them will head over to Rhode Island, where they're not pure enough, so they'll head up to Canada, or to Connecticut. Sorry, I'm saying Canada, Connecticut. And so everyone's just kind of doing their thing here in this big laboratory of experience. And we worked that way for a while. James Oglethorpe is going to go talk to the king and say, hey, there's a lot of debtors that can't pay their bills that you just throw in prison. Why don't we give them a second chance? And he gets the colony of Georgia. And when he goes, he's well-intentioned, and he runs it like a military base. No drinking. Okay. Although that's kind of a big deal back then. And also, we're going to limit how big your farm can be. Ooh. This has worked real well. The people that go to Georgia, that try again, that go for that second chance, aren't happy with those limitations. Because that desire and that need to make decisions for yourself is inherently ingrained in all of us. And so after 150 years, we'll go to the next slide. There we go. After 150 years, what you have is a lot of little colonies that have had permission to be there by England, but are kind of ignored by England. And we go through a period where these colonies get to practice self-governance. They get to decide. They get to determine what their communities look like. They get to have their own legislative bodies. They get to have their own courts, their own mayors, their own governors. Sometimes they have to put up with a royal governor here and there. A lot of times they rebel against that too. But by and large, they're left alone. And when you leave a group of humans alone for 150 years and then you show back up later for some taxes, it doesn't work out real well. Maybe show back up and say hi first. That might be a better approach. But after 150 years, what happened in these laboratories of society and development is that you had a people who would never, ever relinquish that freedom. They got a good taste of it. and they trust each other and themselves to be able to use it appropriately. They learned, they made mistakes, they regrouped, they reassessed, they realigned. Sometimes they had to rewrite their laws, but they made it out. And they established something never before seen in the history of the world. Common, average, regular Joes, many of which down on their luck looking for an opportunity, can actually think, govern, and choose for themselves. That's mind-blowing at the time. Mind-blowing. You mean you're not noble? No. You mean you don't have a famous last name? Oh no. You don't even own land? Well, I'm trying to. Wow. Mind-blowing. Let's go on to the next slide. And what was discovered in all of this is all the good that we inherited from Europe seemed to thrive in America. And all the things that had been part of Europe that were in the way of self-governance seemed to shrivel up and die in America. And it became this amazing opportunity. Well, fast forward a lot of years later, of course, we get through the Revolutionary War. The Founding Fathers are going to stand up for their rights as Englishmen. They will refuse to pay their tax without representation. Wow, what a concept. Really awesome. And of course, at the Constitutional Convention, when they realized that their confederacy, or their alliance between the 13 colonies, wasn't strong enough, wasn't good enough to go forward as a new nation, they decided to overhaul the whole thing. And in secret, well, as secret as you can be when you have that many famous dignitaries coming in and out of what's now Independence Hall, Philadelphia. But while they're there in the summer, sweltering heat, doing what they can to try to keep those debates and conversations in that room until the finished product is delivered, eventually, those debates are settled. Some debates are solved. Some cans are kicked down the road for future generations to deal with. And they come up with the best solution for the 13 colonies involved that they think is the closest to perfect that you can get with very imperfect people. So as Dr. Ben Franklin was walking out of the Constitutional Convention one evening at the wrap-up of it, a group of people came around him and one lady asked him, so Dr. Franklin, what kind of form of government did you give us? And he replies to her, a republic, if you can keep it. Why a republic? Well, the founders were well read. They read a lot. They didn't have YouTube. They read a lot. They had a lot of time on their hands, but they were curious, very, very curious. And they were men of sound understanding, thoughtfulness, and they compared and contrasted, and they looked at Enlightenment thinking and teachings. They based a lot of their beliefs on, of course, their roots in the Judeo-Christian tradition, and they looked at governments that thrived, and they looked at governments that struggled, and they thought the best way to temper corruption in government and still not trample upon the feelings and the thoughts and the opinions of the minorities within this country is to form a republic. So we did. And so we have a representative government that forces us to have a consensus. But the big states don't get to make all those decisions. The small states have a voice. And that is balanced, and we pit ambition versus ambition to make everyone come to the table and figure out things that we can all live with. And we have to keep it. We have to keep that republic. Let's go on the next slide. And I love that warning, a republic, if you can keep it. Ben Franklin knew exactly what they had created. This was not a top-down government. This was a government, of course, where the people held the power. And how do you keep that power as a citizen of this new republic? Well, the first thing, the practical thing, of course, is to know our founding. Read the documents, study them. This is a lifelong pursuit for many of us. We read and reread, we reflect, we look things up, we assess. But the why is in the Declaration of Independence. The how is in the Constitution. And that's one way we can keep it, is to know how the government works. Things that we can all agree upon. The basic civics of how this government is supposed to work. To keep our eye on our political leaders. To know whether they need to be replaced or not. Or whether they're doing a great job. To know what laws are constitutional and which ones are just really out there and violate those principles. And that's the practical reason that way that you can keep it. But probably even more so, and even in my opinion, more important, and a first step to keeping this great republic, so on the next slide, is something that John Adams said. He said, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly unfit to the government of any other. keeping this republic, making sure this remains the land of the free and the home of the brave, starts with you and I. In our hearts, are we seeking virtue? Are we striving to become a better person today than we were yesterday? Are we making those good and right choices that Don Meyer talked about? Are we hitting the mark? And if not, what are we going to do to correct that? And why is that? Well, because our republic maximizes your individual liberty and freedom. You have an abundance of ability to choose your own path in this life without government tyranny. And so therefore, the founders trusted that you would make good choices and that you would align your lives with truth and goodness and wholeness and beauty. Any other form of citizenry doesn't work with our great republic. We have to be good, and we have to pursue truth, and we have to live by it, and we have to adopt it, we have to love it, we have to cherish it, because we have to be able to make good choices, the right choice, the proper choice, and the only way to do that is to pursue these things. And so it starts with us. And I know sometimes when you read the news, you hear a lot of negativity. And it's hard to believe that this country is still great, this country is still good. And it's hard to believe that things are going right sometimes. And there are injustices, absolutely. We're dealing with very imperfect people. 100%, there's always going to be things that need to be addressed. But sometimes it's hard to believe that the country is still good, that the country is still great. Let's go on to the next slide here. But that leads me to this next quote that is often attributed to Tocqueville, who was a French political philosopher that traveled through America at the time of the early republic, trying to get us a sense of what made us tick as Americans. He said a lot of things. This hasn't been found in his writings, but it's been attributed anyway. But I think the quote is still true. America is great because America is good. And if America ever ceases to be good, then America will cease to be great. I'm going to challenge you to do the same thing I had my students do when I read that quote with them and have them memorize it. Put your own name in there. You can just take a moment, put your name in there, recite that to yourself in your own head. Because that's the beauty of this republic. Our greatness depends on my goodness and your goodness. And so before we get caught up in all the horrible news of the world and the horrible news of the nation, the horrible news of who knows where, knowing that those things do need to be addressed, consider this. What good have you done today? How's your family? How's your neighborhood? How's your community? As someone who's been teaching here for a long time, I feel like I could give you a lot of answers on that. I love your children. They are coming from good homes. They are being taught virtue. They love this country. They are striving to do better all the time. Yeah, they make knucklehead mistakes, so do I. Yeah, sometimes they struggle, staying locked in. Don't we all? But this school is a shining example of what that goodness looks like.
Next up, he is currently a sophomore here at Benjamin Franklin High School. Andrew McLaughlin joined the Civil Air Patrol, or CAP, at age 13 as a cadet airman and was recently promoted to second lieutenant. CAP is an auxiliary of the U.S. Air Force. It opened up opportunities to a future career in aerospace. Andrew's training as a CAP cadet has taught him the value of discipline and leadership, which he will share with us today. Welcome to the stage, Andrew McLaughlin.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew McLaughlin, as you heard. I'm a Civil Air Patrol cadet, student pilot, and I'm a student here at Ben Franklin. And I'm here to talk to you all today about leadership, discipline, and flight. And more importantly, my experience with leadership and discipline and how it's affected my life. And I'd first like to start out how he said I joined Civil Air Patrol when I was 13. It kind of changed me. It made me be better at leadership and discipline. And that got me up here today. And I'm gonna be honest, as a child, when I was 13, I was very, very unmotivated, undisciplined. I was pretty lazy, a little chubby too. And going into this first Silhouette Patrol meeting, it kind of started me on this journey to be more disciplined, to have more leadership. And it changed my life, basically, and led me to be here. And because of that, part of this is going to be me telling my story, but another part of this is going to be me to inform you guys about how you all can have more discipline, be better leaders to yourself, and a little bit to others. And I want to be more informational than just my story. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So, what I kind of already mentioned, my first meeting in this whole Silhouette Patrol thing was physical training for like 2 hours, and as a person who's only played video games my entire life, that kind of messed with me. That kind of broke my worldview, the whole leadership and discipline thing. And I'd like to bring up a great example of one of my friends who may or may not want me to say his name, but he shows a lot of personal leadership in my opinion. He has a bunch of goals he'd love to achieve. He has the personal leadership to write them all down in a checklist that he does every single day, and he had the personal leadership to take a maybe more embarrassing risk, or a risk to be more embarrassed, by asking me and his other friends to keep him accountable, to get him to do this thing, to ask him, and making sure he's done the things he wants to do every day. But I have taken what I've learned from being a little 13-year-old who had never done anything hard to where I am now, to be able to tell you all that this is possible. You all can do this, and I believe in you. Thank you for your time.
Next up, we have Ryan Kildee, who is a YouTube animator. In 2018, his passion for telling stories led him to create a YouTube channel. He did not know how to animate at the time, and he hadn't been to art school. With the help of online courses and videos, he was able to teach himself animation. Today, Ryan has turned his passion for storytelling into a business with 800,000 followers on his YouTube channel, Saga the Youngin. Welcome to the stage, Ryan Kildee.
All right, so my name is Ryan, and on YouTube, I go by Saga the Youngin. And for the past 7 years, I have uploaded videos to my channel where I talk about experiences from my life, and I tell stories, and I turn those into cartoons. So tonight, I'm gonna be sharing with you guys kind of the process of how exactly I create my cartoons from start to finish, a little behind the scenes. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. So the process of making cartoons can be broken down into 5 kind of general steps. So it would be first, you're gonna start out with writing your script, then you can create your storyboard, then you're gonna make your line art, and line art is gonna be basically black and white drawings of all your scenes. Then you're gonna add your color, and then you can do any animation that you want. So going back around to the first step, we'll start there. This is possibly the most crucial step of the entire process. You know, the script is gonna lay the foundation for your entire project. You could have the greatest animation in the world, but if your script is boring, if the story is not compelling, it might not matter. So you want to take some good time and really flesh out a really good solid script. And once you've got that, you can move on to step 2. So we'll go to the next slide. So step 2 is going to be your storyboard. Your storyboard is where your script really starts to come to life. It's kind of meant to be just a general overview of what you want your whole animation to look like. So here you can see we have 9 squares up on the screen, and each square is called a board. So this is 9 boards here. And each board is 1 scene. And in each board you just want to include, you know, kind of a sketch of what you want, any important information in the scene, what characters you want, what you want the setting to be, and just get your idea down on a basic. Now, these 9 boards, this is actually like an excerpt from my most recent project I made. Now, that project was a 30-minute long cartoon, and the full storyboard was over 300 boards long. So this is 9 of those 300. But once you've storyboarded your whole script, top to bottom, you can move on to step 3, which is going to be the line art. We've added some more detail, so you really want to flesh out your vision, to the full extent in this step. So you want to turn every single one of your boards into line art, all one by one by one. And then once you've done that, we can go on to the next step. There we go, it's gonna be to add color. So, pretty self-explanatory. We have the black and white version on the left, and we've colored the whole thing here on the right. Next slide. And so now our scene is it's ready to animate. So let's say with this scene, in this example here, we want to animate a car driving down the road. And we want it to start at that black dot there, and we want it to drive down the road, following the arrow until it vanishes off the screen. Next slide. So how can we accomplish this? Well, there's a very simple animation technique called a motion tween. And a motion tween is very simply where you tell the computer where you want your car to start, you tell it where you want it to end, and it's going to fill in everything in the middle for us. And if you see this blue streak that's kind of running across our scene, that's actually what that is. That's what the computer has generated for us, is all 120 drawings of our car. They're all smushed together. It's kind of hard to even tell what it is, but that's all 120 drawings of our car, each one a little further along the way than the last one, and when they're all played in succession, it's going to create the impression of the movement that we want. So let's go to the next slide. And so this is kind of the end result of everything. So there's our car. Just like we told the computer, it took about 5 seconds for it to go down the road. And then I'll explain how we accomplish this. So you can see these characters, they're kind of walking around, and they all get inside this car. So this is what our scene would look like when we've come to the end of our color phase. So in this instance, we actually have to draw out every single step of the motion path that we want. So you can see each character from the start to their end, all their positions, those are all unique drawings. They all have to be drawn. That white shirt character there, he's blocking our car, but the car doors opening and closing, those are all their own frames as well. So that's another, maybe 10 unique drawings of the car door flying open and closing. So it can get quite tedious, as you can see, for a scene like this. Next slide. So this is what the animation file looked like for this scene. So if we compare it to the one with the car, it's a lot more complex, right? The one with the car, we just had the one yellow bar and the 2 black dots. Here we can see we have a ton of black dots spread out all over the place. And each of those black dots are one of the drawings that we had from the previous slide. So one of those drawings fills up every single one of those black dots. Some of them are the white shirt characters, some of them are the car doors, and they all have to be spaced out in accordance and synchronized with each other, right? You don't want a car door flying open before your character gets there, or you don't want characters walking over each other. So that's why they're spaced out the way that they are, to get your motion down right. And then the last thing with this scene is we have another yellow bar there at the bottom of the screen, which is interesting because the yellow bars are motion tweens, right? And we did this whole scene with frame-by-frame animation, so why would we have a yellow bar here? Well, if you notice in the video, and we're going to play the video again in a second if you didn't.
All right, last but certainly not least, Chief Dale A. Walters, a native Arizonan, has served in law enforcement for over 35 years. At one point, he was the Assistant Chief of Police in the Chandler Police Department. Currently, he is the Chief of Police for the Globe Police Department. Today, he'll be joining forces with his son, Robert Walters, Detective of Sex Crimes for the Chandler Police Department. They will inform us on a very timely topic for today, technology, a friend and foe. Please welcome to the stage Chief Dale A. Walters.
So it was kind of an interesting topic. I got to clearly air a couple of things. First of all, 40 is not old. All right, I'm 59 and I'm not old. Secondly, this topic is kind of near and dear to my heart. And we're going to talk about some safety issues before we get going. And because my goal in my job for the last 35 years is not just to enforce the laws of the great state of Arizona, but to also provide safety and education to the people that I serve. And I've been fortunate enough for the last, I don't know, honey, how long have you worked here? 20 years? To be part of the Benjamin Franklin family, and I've been brought in to teach a couple of different times. It's a wonderful school. All my kids went here. Some of them graduated. The ones that didn't, there wasn't a high school yet. So it was kind of a nice thing for us. So thank you for having me. Technology. Anybody here, by a show of hands, can you raise your hand if you got to go see Star Wars when it first came out in the 1970s? You're my people. So that's a form of technology that was amazing. It completely overtook the movie industry. The special effects that they used in there was astonishing. It was amazing. We see stuff every day, and most of us from that generation, back before they came out with smartphones, think about all the things that we had to buy individually: calculators, cameras, road atlases. We had to have a phone book. Nobody knew what Google was. If you wanted it, you had to buy all those encyclopedias for the door-to-door salesman, things like that. So it's really come a long way. And the funny thing is, I was thinking about it when on the break, I went to the men's room and I realized that we can put a man on the moon, but we cannot create a towel dispenser that works properly. So there's positives and negatives to it. So in my world, I've seen tons and tons of positives. The positives I've seen, so I'm not writing reports by pencil anymore. We have Dragon Speak for some of our officers that can talk their reports into our report writing management system. Our vehicles now are mobile offices. We have full internet capability. When we write you a ticket, it prints off right there. We don't have to fill it out in the pad. I can swipe your driver's license and it backfills everything. And that's all really good stuff. The problem is this. Automobiles are a great topic to start off with because my grandparents, when they were growing up, it was still a horse and buggy. And then cars came along and became more accessible to the general public. And then what they realized as they got going faster and stuff, there were some safety issues. My mom, she's a kind, loving mother that cares about her kids, their spouses, and all her grandkids. And so when someone calls her and they're pretending to be my daughter by the use of AI technology, and that says, "Grandma, I need help, I've been kidnapped, you need to send me money," she's going to act. But what she's not going to do is she's not going to act the way I would want her to. She's going to try to resolve the issue immediately. Those are the type of calls that are going out to some of our elderly right now, and it's kind of taking advantage of them. And they're acting. We had one gentleman that lost over $25,000 thinking he was helping out his granddaughter in my little community up in Globe. These things happen on a daily basis. The other thing is they will call them up, and how many people in here know princes from Nigeria? Then why would you cash a check from them? How many people in here deal with Bitcoin regularly? If you are, you're being scammed, unless you're Donald Trump or one of the other people that really play it now. They actually have Bitcoin kiosks where you can go deposit money and get Bitcoin credit back and then send it electronically to the Nigerian people posing as your granddaughter to a different address. We've had people show up to empty buildings thinking that they were going to bail somebody out from immigration issues and stuff like that. The first thing you should know, federal agencies, local agencies, any type of law enforcement entity is not going to ask you to cash a check and send money back to them. You should always double check. You look up the phone number and you call. I get texts on my phone all the time from people I don't know, and if it says spam alert, I just delete it, but then I get stuff like yesterday we got something from my bank that financed my house, and it looked like it was from them, and it had my son's name on it, encouraged him to refinance my house. And I called the bank, and we got it worked out. The problem, like my son said, is most of these suspects, I can never do anything about it. I just can't. And the reason why is because they're not even in this country. It's not like they're not in the state, they're not even in the country. And so they're reaching out and they're bombarding us every day. And if you open up a window they're going to just come after you. They still had candlestick phones for our grandparents and our parents when they were kids growing up, just like on Mayberry. A lot of people were still horseback back then, much less what they're doing today. So you have to realize that you only know what you know. Quick story, I asked my grandmother one time, my wife and I were going on a trip when we were first married, do you have a road atlas? Because you still had to have a map back then. She goes, yeah, honey, I got one. It's like brand new. It's in a drawer. So I opened it up. The newest highway on there was Route 66. They kept stuff. We don't. The problem is the internet does, and your phones do. Anything you go to, anything you see, even if you think you deleted it, you have not. It's out there. One of the things that my wife and I did with our kids is we gave them a safe word. And 2 of my 4 kids used it, where they could call me and I'd ask them, hey, how's it going, honey? And they'd go, just peachy, I'll be right there. That was a safe word in our house for my kids. You can have the same thing with your family as a family unit. That way, if grandma and grandpa get a phone call, they can call and ask, hey, how's it going? Understanding what the safe word. Or if you get that AI call, ask them a question that only that person's going to know. It's to be prepared for, think through, put some safeguards in there and stuff like that. The interesting thought about technology is it good or is it bad? I think it's absolutely amazing. If it wasn't for the breakthroughs in medical technology, I would not be standing here today. And I've got to test it a couple of times in my life as a child and as a teenager and now as an adult. Medical advancements and technology absolutely is the reason I'm here today. It's the reason my son is still walking after a horrible motorcycle accident. There's a lot of positive for it. It's the reason I have a really cool diesel pickup that can pull this building sideways. All those things are great. I mean, we grew up watching the Jetsons and we're basically living in the Jetsons area. But with all that, we have to look at the negative. And because it's moving so rapidly, we have to take ownership of it of ourselves and of our family and actually be proactive to it to prevent the negative things from happening to our kids, our grandkids, and our loved ones. But the problem with technology is it's outpacing us. And what it's doing is it's creating victims within our culture that are absolutely devastating our society. The 2 most vulnerable people in our culture right now are adolescents, young adults, the ages from as soon as they get on a computer until their mid-20s, and then the elderly. And so in true cop fashion tonight, I brought an expert with me. My son, Detective Robert Walters, is going to talk to you about some of the challenges that are facing our kids and our grandkids. And then I'm going to go into the elderly, because it's closer to my people.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Detective Walters with the Chandler Police Department. I've been a detective in the sex crimes unit that deals with child sex crimes and adult sex crimes. I also assist with our ICAC unit, which is Internet Crimes Against Children, not to mention our newly formed HEAT unit, which is our human trafficking unit as well. Some of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about. How many people in here have heard about the movie Sound of Freedom? How many have seen it? Almost everybody who raised their hand, that's awesome. So the reason why I bring it up is because obviously my world is very, very icky. Nobody wants to talk about the things that I do, that I see, that I investigate, because they're gross, they're taboo, it's very private. We're a very private society, right? That's not me. I'm not that guy. I'll talk about anything. So I remember after I saw that movie, I'd already known the story, and I had gone home and I was telling my parents, and my grandmother was there, and my grandmother looked at me and she goes, "Yeah, Shane, I couldn't watch that movie." And the first thought that popped in my head is, you should, because we're too quiet about things that are going on in this world. We're too quiet about the issues with our children. We're too quiet about the problems that we're running into as investigators, seeing these cases with kids that involve cell phones and stuff like that, and the fact that parents are not educated enough to keep up with it.
People don't realize what your phone can do. And without giving you any details about the people I'm talking about, I can tell you that one of the cases that I have worked, how many of you guys have iPhones? Does your family all have the same iPhone? You guys are all on the same plan, right? So you guys use the iCloud and store all your stuff on it? Okay. How many of you guys check your iCloud? You go religiously and look at it? You do?
Once in a while? Okay. So not many people will go and they'll look at their iCloud account to see what's being uploaded, see what their kids are doing and whatnot. In this particular case, juvenile daughter, single mom, doing the best they can in life type deal. Daughter's making some poor choices, mom's also making poor choices with certain explicit images, but they're never being shared or anything like that. They've never been sent to anybody on social media, they've never been sent to people in private messages, they just have them for some reason. To each their own, right? Someone gains access to their iCloud account, and what do you think they do with it? They exploit everything. Everything. All of those images, all the passwords to their social media accounts, and then when they decide that they want more and start reaching out to these people and saying, if you don't give me X, Y, or Z, I'm going to show everybody this. The family obviously decides that they're not going to do that. The entire contact list for mom and daughter got all those images and videos. And the worst part about it is I can't do anything about it because this person is not in the country. This person is in Nigeria, very far away. There's no way that I can even get Nigeria to respond to any type of warrant to tell me who this person is or anything like that. It doesn't work like that. And all of this happened because of simple little mistakes that are being done with social media as far as who you're contacting, what links you're touching and stuff like that.